That's not what you want, in my opinion, for the sport. That's not what should be determining the champion, who can be the healthiest at the end of the season. Welcome everyone to the Monday edition of Fair Territory. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Certainly a fascinating weekend of baseball. And we're going to start today with the guy we've been talking a lot about lately. That guy in New York, number 99, Aaron Judge. Why are we talking about him? Well, let's see. 2 home runs on Sunday. 7 home runs in his last 6 games. He now has 51 for the season. He is on a pace to hit 63 home runs, which of course would break his record from 2022. And the most remarkable thing to me is when you look at his rate stats from this season and compare them to 2022, he is well ahead in those particular statistics. Well ahead. And I want to show you right now just what I'm talking about. Yes, he's ahead in the home run pace by just 1, but the rate stats, wow, it's a significant difference ahead of where he was 2 years ago. And let's take a look right here. 2022, you can see the numbers right there. 311 batting average, 425 on base, 686 slug, 1.111 OPS. Okay, that's pretty good. It was good for an MVP type season, and he won the MVP. 2 years later, we're looking at a batting average of 333. That's 22 points higher, behind Bobby Witt at 347, but pretty darn good. 465 on base, that's 40 points ahead of where he was 2 years ago, leads the majors. 736 slug, that's 50 points ahead of where he was 2 years ago. And a 1.201 OPS, 90 points ahead of where he was in 2022. And if you look at OPS plus, which of course normalizes the OPS for the league and Parks, gives you a good context, he is on a historic pace. Now, will he keep this up? I don't know. But he certainly is hot right now. And keep in mind, too, if you look at the Yankees' schedule, their final 10 series, 7 of them are against what I would call non-contenders. They've got series left against the Royals, the Red Sox, who may be out of it by the time the Yankees get to them in mid-September, and 1 in late September against the Orioles. So when you're playing non-contenders, I would expect he's going to be pitched to. Why not? These teams basically have nothing to lose. They're not exactly in a pennant race. So go ahead, pitch to Aaron Judge. Also, one thing that favors him, in my opinion, going forward in terms of the home run chase, the record chase from 2 years ago, he's been through this once before. He knows how to handle it better than he did then. And when the media crush comes, I don't know that it will be as great as it was then. And he will be better equipped, I would think, to go forward with it, to kind of absorb it into his daily routine. Not that it was so bad the last time. I don't think his daily routine changed. The pressure changed. But he certainly, after experiencing it 2 years ago, would be in position to handle that pressure. Now, we've talked a lot about Judge versus Bobby Witt Jr. for MVP. My opinions are clear. I've stated them again in today's windup in The Athletic. Judge is the overwhelming frontrunner. It doesn't mean that Bobby Witt Jr. is not worthy of being in a conversation. Bobby Witt Jr. is going to have a 10-war season, it looks like. That's pretty good, folks. So when we talk about Aaron Judge as MVP, I have no problem with that. Of course, he is the runaway favorite, as I said. But don't forget the guy in Kansas City. And don't tell me, as a lot of you are, that I can't even have them in the same breath. They're in my same breath. Now, let's turn to the National League, where a more interesting MVP race is taking shape, perhaps. Shohei Ohtani has been the leading candidate all season long. But Francisco Lindor, a much different type of candidate, is having a monster, final 4 months, you would say. He wasn't a great player in April and most of May, but he has been a great player since then. And he right now is a legitimate candidate. Now, here are their statistics of relevance, and we're going to go deeper into this conversation because this only begins to tell part of the story. Ohtani, 40-40. We know that. He got to that this weekend. 41 homers, 40 stolen bases. He looks pretty good for 45-45. I don't know about 50-50, but that would be cool. OPS, 993. Lindor, 27 homers, 25 steals. He has an 826 OPS. He's looking pretty good for 30-30. And his OPS is, I don't know, some 170 points below Ohtani's. Okay, that's a significant difference, of course. So it's an interesting race. I believe it will be determined by what happens in September. If Lindor goes nuts or continues to go nuts and leads the Mets into the postseason, he'll have a much stronger case. He has a case right now, a good case, but in my view, at this moment, Ohtani is still the leader. Finally, in this first part of the show, I want to talk about the races because I don't want to be a spoil sport or a party pooper or whatever term you might want to use. But if you look at the playoff odds, the races, or at least the playoff teams, are pretty much set. The races are not entirely set, and we'll get to that in a second. But let's look at the playoff odds for both leagues, and you'll see what I'm talking about. We have 6 playoff teams in each league as we go forward here. That's the way we do it now the last couple of years. In the National League, the Dodgers are at 100%. This is just to make the playoffs. The Phillies, 99.5. The Brewers, 99.2. The Diamondbacks, 96.6. The Padres, 95.3. That's 5 teams with 95% playoff odds or better. Then the Braves are last among this group at 80%. The Mets are the first team out in terms of playoff odds. They're just under 20%. American League, a little bit more spread out, but not a whole lot. Yankees at 99.9%, Orioles 98.8%, Guardians 96.3%. Then you have 3 teams in the 80s, actually barely in the 80s. Houston and Minnesota are both at 89.7%, Kansas City at 80%. Odd man out in terms of playoff odds, again, is Boston. They are at about 25%. Now, the caveat here is that a year ago, at this point, on this date, the Marlins were a 500 team. They were at 18.4%, somewhere between where the Mets and Red Sox are now. So it is entirely possible that a team on the fringe could get hot in September and, yes, steal one of those wild card spots. But it's going to take a big run, and it's going to take some poor play by one of the teams that we just mentioned with the big playoff odds of over 80%. The real action here might be in the races for best overall record and the races for buys in each league. And I want to show you where those standings lie at this particular moment because that is a little bit more interesting, a little less separated between the haves and have-nots. In the National League, you've got the Dodgers. And the Dodgers at this point, they've taken a 1.5 game lead over the Phillies for best overall record and a 2.5 game lead over the Brewers. Diamondbacks 3 games behind the Dodgers, both in the NL West and the overall standings. The Padres 4.5 games back. So the Dodgers are not exactly comfortable, but about a week ago, it looked like the Los Angeles Dodgers, Philadelphia Phillies, and Milwaukee Brewers were all at about the same place in terms of record, and that they all might be just competing for the best record. That still could happen, of course. But the Dodgers do have a slight cushion right now. Let's look at the American League. It's kind of similar to what I'm talking about here, actually even closer. The Yankees, best record in the American League, 77-54. The Guardians and the Orioles, a game and a half back. So they're within striking distance of the best record. And the Orioles, of course, with the AL East title in their views as well. Minnesota, 4.5 games back. Kansas City, 4.5 games back. Houston, 6.5 games back. Again, this is for best overall record. So we're going to have action in September. The best action might be in some of the awards races, the NL MVP race, but the races for best overall record and for the buys, they're going to be rather interesting because teams will need to decide how to handle their pitching, how hard to push, just exactly how they want to position themselves for October. And October, of course, is what this thing is all about. So September is almost here. We've got a lot to look forward to. And I'm pretty confident that we're going to have a race of some kind, even with the playoff odds as strong as they are for the 12 teams that we mentioned. Time now for the Inside Dish, the part of the show where I go inside a story I've written, a trend in the game, something else entirely. And today I kind of want to continue the conversation we just started in the lead and continue a conversation that I started in my column on Friday, in which I talked about various National League potential playoff rotations. Now, in that column, I focused on the Dodgers because of their tattered state, but I really want to talk more about the Diamondbacks today because the Diamondbacks are the hottest team in the majors. They have the best offense in the majors according to runs per game. And in my view, they have potentially a really strong postseason rotation. I'm talking about at the top, Zach Gallen and Eduardo Rodriguez right now. You've got Brandon Pfaadt as well. You've got Ryan Nelson, who has replaced Jordan Montgomery, the $25 million man in their rotation. And don't forget a guy who pitched yesterday, Merrill Kelly, who is coming off a long time of being inactive with his injury, but has pitched of late, made a couple of starts since coming back, and yesterday pitched fairly well. He looks like he's rounding into form. Yesterday was 6 innings, 4 runs against the Red Sox. The Diamondbacks, the way I see them, are maybe the best positioned team in terms of their rotation. Now, they are not the only National League team with a potentially strong postseason rotation, and I know Phillies fans are already jumping up and down and screaming that I am ignoring their team, especially when Ranger Suarez came back this weekend and pitched well against Kansas City, 5 innings, 1 run. The Phillies have a potentially great postseason rotation as well. I'm talking about Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler and Ranger Suarez and Christopher Sanchez. Now, let's look at the groups that are in play here. I'm leaving out Atlanta for the moment. Atlanta is kind of a fringy playoff team right now. They're in great position, I know, and they do have a really good potential top of the rotation. Chris Sale, Max Fried, Reynaldo Lopez. Charlie Morton would be okay as the fourth. So I'm listing 4 guys in each particular case here. And the reason I'm listing 4 is because in the division series, the way the schedule sets up, you're going to need 4 starters. You can't get away with 3 because of the way the off days are. So the Dodgers, this is their wishful thinking rotation. Jack Flaherty, Tyler Glasnow, currently on the IL. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, currently on the IL. And Gavin Stone, who has been their best pitcher all year, who is now at 135 and a third innings. And oh my gosh, it's a career high. And guess what? His last 2 starts have been brilliant. He does not appear to be falling apart. The Phillies guys I mentioned, the Diamondbacks guys I mentioned, let's look at that board one more time and I'll give you the rest of this because it's pretty interesting. The Padres, look at them at the bottom. Dylan Cease, Michael King, who's been really good this year, Joe Musgrove, now off his injury, and Yu Darvish came off the restricted list on Friday. He's got a chance now to join their rotation, rejoin it after missing some time. He's been throwing the entire time, so he's got a chance too to be part of their mix. And then there is Milwaukee, a team that has had one blow to its rotation after another and somehow is still surviving. We've got Freddie Peralta at the top, Tobias Myers, Rookie of the Year candidate, probably not going to win with Paul Skeens and Jackson Merrill in the mix, but he's had an amazing season. And Frankie Montas and Colin Ray. It's not great. It's not like the other teams, but the Brewers seem to find ways to win no matter who they throw out there. Remember, they lost Corbin Burns in a trade. They never had Brandon Woodruff because of an injury. They barely had Wade Miley because of an injury. And Robert Gasser, their top prospect, underwent Tommy John surgery, and they still are running away with the NL Central. So, as we go forward here, none of what I just said or described is set in stone. Why? Because as we've seen all season long, pitchers keep getting hurt. And with a month to go in the season, I am fully confident, unfortunately, that one pitcher we just listed is going to have some kind of physical setback or physical problem that surfaces. That's the issue here. When it comes to the Dodgers, they've got to get Glasnow back going again. They said this wasn't serious, but it's going to be more than 15 days. And Yamamoto, who knows what he's going to be? He hasn't pitched since June 15th. He's had a shoulder issue. Now he's looking good. He's about to start a rehab assignment. Everything is pointing on the up arrow for him. And that's great. But again, we don't know what we're going to get out of him. The Dodgers don't know. That said, the way the Dodgers have handled their pitching, including Glasnow in this recent IL stint, they have pointed everything toward the postseason. And that's the way a team like that should be operating. So it's going to be a really interesting September as we go forward here. And it's going to be a really interesting postseason to see which teams can get through it. 4 rounds for all but the 2 teams that get the byes. That's not easy to do with the state of pitching today. And beyond that, you have all of these different innings issues and injury issues that we've seen surface. But I want to go back to the Diamondbacks because I just love where they are. Their bullpen is shakier than some. But if Eduardo Rodriguez is back to form, and he certainly seems to be so far, and Gallen finds his stride, and he was good against the Red Sox this weekend, and then you get maybe Merrill Kelly back in the mix, you've got more depth there than most teams can even dream of. The Padres, too, are looking better with Darvish back in the mix. That makes Waldron kind of the fifth guy if you even need him. But let's see what Darvish is after missing so much time. So it's going to be a really interesting month of September in terms of these rotations and how they set up for the postseason and really what we're down to in our sport right now. And it's not a healthy place to be, is a battle of survival, a survival of the fittest kind of test. That's not what you want, in my opinion, for the sport. That's not what should be determining the champion, who can be the healthiest at the end of the season. But that is where we are. And because there is such attrition with starting pitching, these kind of analyses are at least relevant, even though they're not going to necessarily hold through the end of the season. We'll be back after a quick word from AJ Przinsky, Eric Kratz, and Scott Braun.
I love a great deal, but I'm not going to run sprints in the outfield just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. With Mint Mobile, it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan. Purchase and activation is super easy too.
To get started, go to mintmobile.com/territory. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts.
To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/territory. That's mintmobile.com/territory. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/territory.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on their first 3-month plan only. Speed slower of 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Time now for Grillin Ken, the part of the show where I answer your questions, and we've got some good ones this week, so let's get right to them. First question comes from Eric Johnson, who asked, with Dylan Cruz making his debut Monday night, Dylan Cruz, top prospect coming out of last year's draft, what are your thoughts about the Nationals heading into 2025? Are the Learners expected to spend again this offseason? What are your thoughts about Washington as a dark horse landing spot in the Juan Soto sweepstakes? Hashtag come home Soto. Well, expecting the Learners to spend is a question or a topic that I don't know that I have the answer to. I don't see Juan Soto coming back to DC. Remember, they offered him $440 million over 15 years a couple of years back. That prompted the trade of Juan Soto. And while this ownership has spent at times in the past, Scherzer and Strasburg and Corbin, for the most part, their big investments have been in starting pitchers. Remember, they lost Harper in free agency, they traded Soto, and they traded Trey Turner. Is it possible they jump into this thing? Sure, it's possible. But at the same time, they're going to outbid the Mets and the Yankees, and I don't see that happening. Now, I do expect, however, the Learners to spend at some level this offseason. In fact, I would say they had better. They've got a really promising young group of players right now, and Dylan Cruz is merely the latest. All of the guys who came back in the Soto trade, we've seen some of them now. Mackenzie Gore, C.J. Abrams, and now James Wood, those three in particular, they are centerpiece type players, cornerstone type players going forward, and the Nationals have some other young starters who are looking good as well. Patrick Corbin comes off the payroll after this season. They've still got a few more years of Strasburg or paying that out, but their payroll is going to be in much better shape. There is no reason why they shouldn't be a team that picks and chooses in free agency and maybe picks off even a star or two. I just don't think it will be at the level of Juan Soto. All right, now let's get to the next question. This comes from Cody. Cody asks, based on A's president Dave Cavill's promise of a $180 million payroll by Vegas, do you see the A's spending big this offseason? Yes, I've written about this at length. The A's have said they are going to ramp up in the Sacramento years leading up to the opening of their new ballpark in Las Vegas in 2028. As I've written, I will believe it when I see it. Now, the A's can't go anywhere but up with their payroll. They're at 62 million or so right now, which is essentially nothing. So, yes, I do expect them to spend some, but here's the question. Which players, which free agents, are going to want to come to Sacramento? It's a good question, since the facilities are not going to be the level that you're going to see in actual major league cities. And I don't want to dismiss or demean Sacramento, but it's not an actual major league city just yet. It's an interim major league city that is transforming a minor league ballpark and trying to make it into a major league ballpark. In my opinion, the best way for the A's to raise payroll would be to trade for high salaried players, players who don't have a choice because they've been traded to come to Sacramento. Easier said than done. You might be taking on some money that isn't necessarily highly valued or in a good place in terms of the contract value, but it's going to be difficult for them to attract free agents, I would expect. Actually, about as difficult as it's been for them to get free agents to Oakland when they've been willing to spend a little bit. They've gotten guys over the years, but it's been guys on the fringe. Alex Wood and Russ Stripling, those types, not really big-time free agents, not in their recent iteration under the great John Fisher ownership. All right, let's go to the final question now, and this one comes from Kanaoto, who asks, how good is Jackson Merrill? Good question, and a fair question, but let's answer it like this. Let's look at Fangraph's version of WAR. Jackson Merrill is a top 20 player in the game right now, just based on that metric alone. And that metric is not the end-all, be-all, but it is all-encompassing in terms of rating a player's offensive, defensive, and base running value. Jackson Merrill, top 20 in the league. He's actually 18th on Monday morning. And the other thing, of course, that distinguishes Jackson Merrill, the thing that I believe the person is getting at with his question is, wow, this guy is really clutch. It's crazy what he has done. 5 game-tying or go-ahead runs in the 9th inning or later in his rookie season. 5. No other player this season has more than 3. So you could argue that he's been the best 9th inning hitter in the majors this season. And I don't know if he has the highest OPS in the 9th inning, but when you do that 5 times, you're pretty darn good. So Jackson Merrill, rookie, a guy who had not played center field professionally before this season, he is a leading Rookie of the Year candidate along with Paul Skeens and a number of others. And in my opinion, right now, if I had a vote, I'd vote for this cat because what he has done for the Padres, he's actually been their MVP. It's been amazing. Thanks everyone for their questions. Thanks everyone for watching, for listening. You know where to find us. YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Feel free to subscribe, to like us, to do whatever you want to do, to complain. You can do that too. We will be back Thursday at 12:30, our normal Thursday show with the great Alana Rizzo. Have a great week, everyone, and join us then.
And a reminder for everyone, if you're not part of the BetMGM app, here's how you can get involved and get a little something extra when you start. When you use the bonus code FOUL, download the app, deposit at least $10 into your new BetMGM Sportsbook account, and receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. And if that happens, your bonus bets will be available once your initial wager is settled. Gambling problem or concern, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hey everybody, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. Fair Territory airs each week, and we'd love for you to become part of our community. Here's another video you might enjoy. See you next time.